I told my teacher I wanted to perform, and I must have been in 5th grade, 4th, something like that. And they were a forward school who were glad to have that, and they had auditorium class. And I was the performer, and I had a big thing of material, and I ran all around in and out of the stage, and everybody watched me, and I felt important. I loved it. I loved showing off, and I always was drawn to movement.
So that got you, that moment sort of sets in your mind what you really loved?
Yes.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Always loved it.
When did you start incorporating making visual art or sculpture into
the
yeah.
My great-grandfather was a world-famous artist, so I grew up in a home where all the walls were covered with art, and I thought that's what everybody did. I was always amazed that I'd go to other people's homes and they'd have empty walls. And I thought, what do you look at? My father did a lot of woodworking. He had a college studio, this dark place in the basement, and I would go down and watch him. He had a big saw, jigsaw, and most fathers would say, "Oh, stay away, you get hurt." My father encouraged me to use the jigsaw, and I remember in 5th grade I made, and I don't know where it got put with the last move, but I made a little squirrel out of the jigsaw, and painted it white, brown, and orange, and that was my first. I didn't think of it as sculpture. I just, if I gave the chance, I got to use the jigsaw, which I loved doing.
And using ceramics, when did you first start doing that?
My first piece, which I called Growing Things, and it was a piece of board about this thick and this tall, and I carved it.
Oh, it's a wooden sculpture, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's one of my favorite pieces. I know, I saw it, and it has a little plaque at the bottom, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like from the night. It has a date on it. I think 1950 something, right?
Yeah, and well, things. Nobody tried to make me into something. It all just naturally grew.
Wonderful. That tall piece is more abstract, and then you start incorporating a lot of figures into your ceramics.
I went to VCU. I had taught 20 years at West Hampton College, taught dance, but I thought a dancer's body only lasts up to a point, and I would need to do something that will use an older body. And then I thought, well, Dad's stopping this. I didn't think of it this way, but I think now I must have known all this, that if you pause in a dance, you've got sculpture.
Yes.
And so I thought that is the closest thing to dance. I can do that without having a fabulously healthy body. I took a sculpture class with, I've forgotten her name. She was a well-known teacher at DCU of sculpture. And I thought she showed me how to do. She didn't do anything. She just placed clay. And so I'm just messing around with movement. And I thought, ooh, I like that. And it
Nice.
went on from there.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
just did what came naturally.
Yeah.
And that was, I would make dance sculpture is just dance holding its breath.
When I look at your figures and your sculptures, it's almost like
They,
there's an abstraction down to just the pure movement.
I
Right?
move them.
Yeah.
I move them when I make them. And I was teaching movement, and I had a lot of sculpture people in my class, and this character was in my class, and he gave me that
She's talking about
top sculpture, and I
I
was
like that.
real thrilled.
Nice.
And I thought I'd never see him again, but he left, and then about 3 or 4 years later, he came back and he said, "I want to work with you." And I
Wonderful.
thought, what? Huh? But I said, okay. And I said, I'm just moving for the feel of it and how to teach improvisation so you have variety in shape, but you have variety in I can't think of the word, intensity.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that takes place, and it's all movement. Robbie and I grew as a couple,
Uh-huh.
dancing together, and then people liked it, and they asked us to do for their group, and performance, everything just grew from that. It was John that came back from Europe and stopped to see this friend of his before he went back to New Mexico. And the friend said, "I'm working with these dancers, and if I'm going to visit with you, you have to come with me because we only have this night." Anyway, John went with them, and John had been, I've left out a lot. John had danced with a company in New York, and he danced in California. In fact, he'd been a naked dancer in San Francisco, and then he'd come back to Virginia just to visit this friend, I think. And anyhow, one thing led to another thing, and John and I found we could move together real well to my group, which is called Artspace, which they had just started here in Richmond.
Uh-huh.
And I was thrilled. I wanted to be with people who talked about art.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk about physical education. Anyway, I went to the meeting and joined immediately, and I've been more and more involved. The first big show that I did for the Virginia Museum Theater was Kiss Me Kate, and I think it was 1961.
Wow.
And I had small, I don't know what jobs, choreographing, but Kiss Me Kate, I hit the top, and I became famous and well known, and everybody wanted me, and I wanted to be with everybody. So I did choreography
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, and I was really good, but then you can do too much of a thing, and it goes up and down.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the art that you surround yourself with. You have your own art and art by other people. When it comes to the art that you love, what attracts you to, say, a certain piece of artwork, and you say, I want this up on my wall. I want this.
Do not pick art to pieces and say, oh, that's use of space, his use of color, his connection with. I don't do that.
Right.
I feel if you are attracted to a piece of art and it's on the door like this, and you keep it on your wall and you look at it day in and day out, and when you look at it you say, yeah. Every time I look at that, I love it. And that, and and this has been true for me since childhood. Well, for instance, that was done by Cheryl Tanlish, who is an art major, and she gave me that.
Uh-huh.
But she was the one that got me into art. She said, I was sitting, I went to see her on a Sunday, and she said, I am working on a new piece, and you're going to talk to me. You got to do it while I'm working. So we went outdoors, and I watched her working, and she said, here, do something. And she stuck this fat piece of marble out to me, and gave me a hammer and chisel. And I still have the piece I made that day. I start out a piece with a vague idea, and as I work on it, it takes on a idea and a meaning, and tells me where to go. Those feet, those pieces. I got into the feet thing. I've forgotten now what got me started with. Oh, I was trying to learn the body. And I was making it out of clay. And I got a lot of success with feet. I have never gone intellectually into my sculpture.
Yeah.
It's totally visual. The look of a foot and the fact that when I started making feet, I could put clay around my own feet and make a model and do it that way.
Yeah.
And I did it because I could make a real foot that way.
Yeah.
And as I say one thing, dug into another, and I always had this feeling for design and connection, and all the things you have as an artist were born in me and grew up in me. And when I needed them, I used them. But I didn't think intellectually like all these people come around, and I think, what a waste of time. You do art with the art and you work in it. You know, doors opened and I walked through.
Yeah.
And I did I forget now the first. Oh, I did Kiss Me Kate at the museum, and that sort of opened the museum to me, and so I almost lived for a couple of years at the museum. I was there every day, all day. And I just embraced. When a door opened, I came in. The museum was growing. They had just built the addition onto it, and the museum theater for 7 years was the biggest theater the most active in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And I helped create that because I took what I had learned in movement classes and fitted them in to musicals.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little shift of intention in the movement, but the reason I think that I bounced immediately to the top was the fact that I had behind me all those years of art.
Mm-hmm.
And other people were coming into choreography from dance class, which was steps.
Yeah.
And I was doing movements, which is much different than steps.
Mm-hmm.
And I was creating those movements. And I had been raised with the musical background, And that had been my life. So it just all came together. I had my fame, I had my experiences, and I traveled all over the world with it, and I have been so appreciative at the way life just opened for that.
Yeah, I did want to ask you one other question just about John Bailey. So
Yeah.
I was not aware, though I grew up in Washington, D.C., and so I saw the Maryland mural frequently. And then when I was researching, was they even recently refurbished a mural 2 years ago, and so that kind of is a legacy that he has up there in D.C.
Well, I won't go through all the steps,
Right.
but he got involved with a gay community on 16th Street with a man who was a zinger. It's one of these, there are certain people that make things happen.
Uh-huh.
And his name was Chuck, and I forgot what the rest was. But he had money, a big swimming pool in Washington on 16th Street, and he was enamored with John Bailey. They took him in as family, and he lived with them for several years.
Mm-hmm.
And worked with them, and they brought in all sorts of, at those years on 16th Street, they brought in people from all the arts,
Mm-hmm.
and people were constantly there. And it hit its peak, and then it naturally went down.
Mm-hmm.
And life went on.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to go to Washington. I went to D.C. at least 2 or 3 times a week to get a master class.
Oh.
Because I was a master teacher in
Uh-huh.
Richmond, but if you are a dancer, you have to constantly take class
Mm-hmm.
from somebody.
Yeah.
So I went to D.C. and took class 3 times a week.
Oh.
And that drive got so big that John, who was with this other group but had his own apartment, let me have a bed for the nights that I needed to stay up there.
Okay.
So I could always count on him,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how we got to know each other so well. And then I invited him down to Richmond,
Mm-hmm.
and he fell in love with my house in the country.
Yeah.
And everything just grew from there. We had no concept that that's where it would go,
Right.
but it's been a wonderful life.